Welcome back, everybody. You are watching the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, and you are looking at the needle bar side of my Singer 301A, and I wanted to show this to you. I've got some nice, beautiful sunlight. It's so good to see the sun this week, and I have some good natural light here, and I thought this is a great time to show you all the reinstalling of the bed extension. Now, when you look at a Singer 301, the 301 specifically, I'm not referring to the 400 or the 500 series, but the 301, all of them have a bed extension. Many of them have what is called the standard or regular bed extension, and then there's also there are models that have a longer extension, and I have a black version of that I'll be restoring, so you'll get to see that. You may have already seen one in some of my prior videos on 301s. Anyway, you may recall that this machine, one of the bolts was in the extension, but I noticed that it was a little floppy, and then on closer examination I realized why. This is the original bolt, and it's a specific bolt, very high quality steel, and the way it's designed to work, many of you will never actually have this issue because these typically don't come off. I mean, they're here, and in fact, I think this is probably the first I've ever had to be loose. I think I had a Singer Featherweight, had a similar issue once. But anyway, you'll see that the bolt looks like this. So part of it is threaded and part of it is not. So it is designed to go into the side here. And if you look, if you can see, pretend you're looking from underneath. It's a kind of I think a better way to understand it. You can see that when the bolt goes through, the bolt slides, even the thicker part slides through, so that on the outside you see this, but on the inside you see, well, actually you wouldn't see this. You shouldn't see much of anything, because if you look down here, this bolt is designed to be wide enough to connect into a threaded hole, which is right here. So anyway, you may recall I had to engineer or finagle something that would work in a similar fashion. I went through my bolt surplus screw box, and I found this. It has the perfect set of threads, but of course I had to take a piece from another bolt and use it as a sleeve, because I was trying to recreate as best I could the original bolt. Now, it doesn't look exactly the same, because it's not. How, you can say, well, look at the tops of the bolts, they're a little different, and the circumference of the sleeve I created is not quite the same size. However, it's wide enough that it fills that space and I don't get any wiggle. And the thread, one of the most crucial factors here is, now they don't look the same. I realize that one looks, the one on the right might look a little more narrow, but it is actually perfect. It threads beautifully in the same hole. So this is one of those situations where you can try to find a vintage one. Some people part them out. I didn't want to take the time, or didn't have the inclination to go doing that just for one screw. And so I thought, well, let me see if I can come up with something. And I did. So I already have a different video on how I did that, which I believe we'll be posting before this one. In any case, it is time to put the extension back onto the machine. So I'm merely going to, this is actually shouldn't take that long to showcase. Oh, let's go from the side here. So it doesn't really matter. I don't even know that, in fact, you can see here, I've got the heads of these bolts almost look the same, and one of them may actually have come from a Singer, but it's a different design, maybe on the top, or it doesn't have the same sleeve. Who knows? In any case, I'll go ahead and put the original facing, and I really don't think this matters for aesthetics. Most people don't even notice the bolt at all. It's not really a focus on the machine, but you know, it's really up to you. It shouldn't matter. And I'm going to do what I always do with any bolt. Even if it screws in fine, I'm putting one drop, and I mean just one. This really is just a minimal amount, okay? So don't go crazy here. You'll end up with an oily mess if you do this. But I like to do this. I call it future-proofing the screws. Give them one drop of fresh sewing oil just on the very end. Notice I'm not going all the way up here, going to the very tip of the threads. And that's all you need. That's probably even more than you need, because the threads here are not that long, but when you thread, when you put oil on the lower threads, as it goes in, it'll spread the oil. We're not talking about a major amount here. So I'm going to go ahead and take, let's see if I can, there we go. So I've got this. It fits in fairly snugly, but it moves fine, right? And let's see, I am going to lower my camera tripod so that you all can see a little bit better about what's going on here. It may sound self-explanatory. I mean, I'm just putting this bolt in here, but now you can see, and if I zoom in, you'll see the hole where these go, and you can even see the little turn marks where this thing has come up and down, and that's normal. That's not unusual over time. So let's move the chassis around, and what's happening is you can't see the hole here because of that ledge. So we'll come down a little bit more, see if that helps. Kind of I'm not used to having my camera down that far. Okay, so we've got this. We're going to line it up, and I'm simply going to, maybe that'll make it a little easier for you to see, and I'm going to put this screw in, and it should go right in without any fuss. As you can see, of course, this is the original. It should. I think the real test, I'll tell you what, let's take the one I made, the one I fabricated, because that's the one that we really want to test, right? We want to make sure that it's going to do what we're asking it to do here. So I'm going to come over. Now, I need to get the thread started, and then the little shaft cover that I made should work just fine. And I know it's almost, it should be obvious, but any time that you are screwing in anything that is threaded, always go slow. And you know, this is turning beautifully, and so I know that the threads are working fine, and it's already holding quite well. Now, one thing you can do, and I'm trying to remember if I had this, I believe, yeah, I have a washer. This is the one that went, I believe, with the original. I think that's right. Hold on a minute here. I might be mistaken. Okay. I was wondering if, wait a minute, if I had a washer here or not. And no, this hole is too small. You will sometimes end up with pieces when you're working on a machine, and you really want to take photographs. I think I've suggested this in the past, as you go along, because if you don't, you may not remember where all these pieces go, and it's a lot easier to deal with. Now I'm just going to, I've got this, I'm just checking how snug it is. It's snug, and I stop, right? And if I had used the threaded bolt without the little sleeve I made, it might have worked, but I think this would have been a little less stable, and it would have ground into the paint or something. I don't know. Okay, so we'll just come over and do the other side right quick. This should not be that big a deal. Really should not. Many of you may absolutely never have to even do this. In fact, some of you may never have even thought about these bolts, and I typically don't spend a lot of time thinking about them either, but I had to in this case because the machine, when I bought it, it was not apparent to me that these were missing because it was moving and I was not really looking at that. It's just not a common issue. When I go to inspect a machine, I don't always have the luxury of a ton of time. I ask the person to let me see it, and of course, I have, in fact, I think I've made a video talking about what to look for when you're buying a machine, but sometimes this will just happen. You can't spend necessarily 3 hours at someone's place looking at a machine. If you're in a thrift store, you might have a little more time to inspect it, but so this is the original screw, and I've put it on the back side, and I've snugged it down. Now, you can, if you tighten your screws, don't over tighten them. Remember, this extension is made of aluminum, okay, and the screws are, I believe the screws are steel. There's a really quick way to check that. I can always just take my magnet to it. Where did I put my magnet? And you can put a magnet on it and check it for sure. Now, because I snugged it, now look at that. Okay, it has a little snug. It's snug enough that it can actually stay up. When you put your machine, zoom back out. When you put your machine in a case, or if you're trying to move it, it's sometimes helpful to have this flip up and stay. But if yours is a little loose, you can always try to snug it. But be careful. Do not over tighten the screws, because if you do, it is entirely possible that you could damage the aluminum. Aluminum is a much softer metal than steel. It's strong, but it's not the same as steel. And but of course, it has a much lighter weight, and that's one of its great benefits. Okay, so there we have the Singer 301A, which is still under restoration, but we have